I guess let's start her up. We got that one rocking now. We got this one rocking. I was going to do a little GoPro there, but nah. Let's just get into it. All right. There we go. Yo. Welcome to episode number 16 of the Living for a Living podcast.
Living for a living, baby. How you doing?
Oh, and we're back in week 3 in a row right now. Thanks for tuning in. I'm the host, Joey Bradley. If you didn't already know me, stationed right now in Barcelona. Have been living abroad primarily for the last 5 years or so. Given, spur of the moment little intro of myself for any new people that have joined. I've been playing American football in Europe, which is a crazy sentence in itself, I know. But it's true. It exists out here, not rugby, not football with your feet. American football, helmet, shoulder pads, all that stuff, play quarterback. And it's, looking back on it now, this is on year 5 that I'm doing it. Hopefully going to be playing in my 6th season this fall. And I'm just truly thankful and blessed for what it's provided. So if you're new, if you're tuning in, if you're not, appreciate you coming back. Appreciate you being here. Let's kind of get into it. And, I'm going to start something, I'm still figuring out exactly what I want to do with this podcast. The Living for a Living is my theme, but I feel that can be very broad in terms of just what I'm doing in day-to-day life, how I view life in general, society. I mean, it's super broad, which I like, but it mainly just has to do with life. And so I know lately it's been kind of political, or focusing around the George Floyd incident, the protests, the political scene, Trump, Biden, all of those things. I don't see this podcast going that way all the time, but right now it's just kind of what is happening, at least in everybody's mind. And I feel that I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I think both sides, both wings are a part of the exact same bird, and that's a problem. This two-party system that we're in is a definite problem. I just try and, with anything, especially politics though, where everything's just become so polarized that if you're a liberal, you have to support everything for each side in every case and every point, and if you're not, then you get labeled as something else, or you get canceled or whatever. And if you're a conservative, you have to, or if you like Trump, then you have to think he's the best leader ever and never says anything stupid. And it's just these black or white things, and I don't mean race at all. I'm just speaking in as an analogy. It's these issues that have gotten us to this divisive point that we're at right now. I mean, and then add in the media to that, which is the real culprit of it, in my opinion. But I just say all that my stance, I'm going to get into my political views after I ask this kind of open, honest question that's been on my mind as I've read some discussions and been involved in some discussions myself over the past week or so. And I'd like this theme to be something that comes up, and maybe the viewer, you get a question in or something. Like I said, I'm just still trying to figure this out, exactly what the best thing is, what's most enjoyable for people to watch, what I like talking about most. And so I'll get in. But like I said, I think I view myself as a moderate or an in the middle. On sometimes I lean one way, sometimes I lean the other, case by case, situation by situation, whatever to me makes the most common sense and is in the best interest for most people, and there's always, in our day and age, someone is always going to be mad at something. You can never say the perfectly right thing no matter what. And so I know that my views are my views, and I've reached these views through experience and other things. And so it's just what they are. They're just my own views. So I just kind of wanted to get that on the table, like, as we start, so you kind of know where I'm coming from with this whole thing. But my honest question is, through some discussions that I've had over the last week, and it tends to be, I'm from Seattle, Washington, I meant to say that, which is an extremely liberal state and liberal area, Seattle is. And so a majority of my friends from high school that I'm still in contact with now are definitely more on the liberal side. And so, and I used to see myself or identify much closer to that side than I did the conservative. Now I really don't know. But anyway, sorry, I digress. My open, honest question for today is, throughout discussions, I keep hearing the main talking point the liberal side loves to bring up is that, you know, Trump is racist and sexist and whatever ist you want to use, xenophobic, etc., and that his actions and his words and his policies all reflect that. And so what I want to get and focus in on is the policies, because I'll admit, and I think everybody in the world will admit, Trump says some stupid shit. And so his actions and words, maybe at some point, I'm sure, I mean, we know the grab him by the pussy thing, like, he said some dumb shit. And so we're not arguing that. But the thing that I want to ask about and get out there is, what is a policy? And this is now, this question is for both liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, whatever. What is a policy that you feel, whether if you're a Democrat, that you feel Trump has enacted that has been racist or has hindered the Black Lives Matter movement, or is, you know, hurting our society as a whole? What's an example of a policy that you feel has been bad for our country for these reasons that you say Trump is so bad for? Because whenever this gets brought up, and I ask, and I'm honestly asking people, my friends, when I'm talking about it, I say, you know, what I'll call them on their phrase of all his policies and da da da. I said, well, what's an example of like a specific policy that you disagree with? And to this day, I haven't received an answer yet. And so I'm not saying that there isn't an answer. It's just that always seems to get swept under the rug. And if we're talking true change, like, the policies are what matters. It's not the tweets that matter. It's the policies. And so I would like to just open the floor in the comments, whatever. I mean, I try and be as respectful as possible. Listen to everything you say, respond accordingly. What's a policy that you feel has been racist, sexist, hindering to a specific group, etc., that Trump has put in place in his 4 years here? And then on the flip side, to the Trump supporters out there, what's a policy that you feel has benefited society and has helped the country as a whole? Because, like I said, I haven't gotten into this discussion as often with Trump supporters, simply because a large portion of my circle is more on the liberal side than the conservative. But I think it can also go both ways, that there's a lot of people that support Trump that might not necessarily know specific acts or policies that have been put in place, and they're just following along their own little bandwagon kind of thing. So that's the honest question for today. Talk to me about some policies. Put them in the comments. Let's get an actual discussion going. You know, let's leave the defensiveness at the door. Let's just open it up. Be respectful in everyone from the beginning. Let's just assume that everyone's speaking from a loving and a caring tone. Because I know on Instagram, I know in comments, it's super easy to get defensive because you read the comments in your own specific voice in your head. And I'm guilty of it myself. And so a lot of the times when I'm having these discussions on Facebook or whatever, is I lead with, I'm in a calm tone, and I mean nothing but understanding and love. And so I think in the comments below, if you're going to comment, please come with that kind of tone. So it can be civil and we can have some discussion, we can have some understanding. And while we might not agree at the end of the day, hopefully there's a little bit more understanding from each side and we go closer rather than further apart, which is the goal for all the media, the goal for everything. Us being divided is much more beneficial and much more profitable than us being together. That's just facts. So yeah, let's open it up. I'm going to start, I think, each week with an honest question, and let's go like that. All right? I'm interested to hear your guys' answers. Like I said, I don't want this to be super political or anything like that. I don't see it as a political thing, but just right now with the election coming up, it's going to be in the news. It's going to be talked about. It's going to be pop culture. So I myself am going to talk about it as well. And so I think it's important that I should kind of explain what my political beliefs are so you have an understanding of who you're listening to and where I'm framing my references and my experiences and things like that. I would say if I had to label myself, to start, I think identity politics is part of the fucking problem with this country right now. Like I mentioned earlier, the fact that if you're a liberal or a Democrat or a conservative or a Republican, like you are on this team and you have to support that team no matter what, even if you disagree with what is being said for that specific issue or whatever. I think that's a huge problem we've gotten ourselves into over these years is, the two-party system in itself doesn't allow for any real outside change or outside noise to happen. It's just solely focused around those two groups. And so I don't even like labeling myself, but if I had to, I would say I'm somewhat of a libertarian. I think that less government is probably better, just simply from my own experience, that I want to live my life free of anybody telling me what to do, basically. And so, I think we should be out of wars that don't involve us, also because it saves money. And along those is basically just the freedom to be yourself and choose what you want in this world. The American dream to me is starting with nothing and getting to somewhere and getting something and essentially being able to do what you want and live your life. And so that's where and so on some issues, I'd say I probably socially, I lean more to the liberal side, but then financially or economically, I lean a little bit more to the conservative side. But then again, that's throwing a blanket over it, and there's going to be some social issues I might be more conservative, and some economical issues I might be more liberal. And so, but that's where I'd say I am as a whole. When I was 18, I really, really liked Ron Paul as he was running for the Republican nominee, and I was really hoping he would eventually run independent. And so I was like super, super gung-ho. That was 18. It would have been my first election I would have been able to vote in. And I was like, Ron Paul all the way. Let me be on the campaign, and did quite a bit of research for an 18-year-old, at that time, and kind of got some of my ideas I realize now have been at that age that have developed over time. And so that's where I kind of started with it. I would say over, I'm 29 now, so that's about 10 years. Throughout maybe that first half of my life, I was probably leaning a little bit more to the liberal side, I guess you could say, the liberal democratic side. And now I feel maybe the last half of pretty much since I moved away from the U.S. in 2015, I've leaned a little bit more towards the conservative side. But like I said, I don't like making that statement because it leaves an automatic assumption that I don't necessarily agree with everything on every subject, And so going just back to the 2016 election, I was a big Bernie supporter, or I liked what Bernie was saying. I didn't donate or do anything like that. And I would have voted for Bernie had that been the situation. I would have felt compelled. Main reason is just it felt different. Bernie wasn't preaching the status quo stuff with the universal health care, the education, those things. After some time living in Europe, I'd seen little bits and pieces of that in action and realized how they've helped from my perspective. And so I would have been a Bernie guy 2016 without even a second thought. And then after the Dems basically rigged the election to get Hillary in, I was, I basically said it was a choice of, do you want your eyes scratched or poked out, choosing between Hillary or Trump. And I didn't vote. I was also living abroad at the time. I don't feel, to get off onto a little bit of a subject, is I don't think that voting for the president really matters too much. I think it's all kind of not a scam that's going to get taken out of context, but it's with the Electoral College, like, it only really matters in the swing states. Me being from Washington, like, we're going to be Democratic. The Electoral College is going to get the Democrat vote no matter what. So no matter who I vote for, it really doesn't matter, in my opinion. From a local level, I think voting's super important. And if I lived primarily in the U.S., in a specific place that I could call home and be a local, I would be all for voting local, and I would do that enthusiastically. But I don't, and so I really don't follow too many local things, because to me it's kind of a waste of time. I don't see myself living permanently in the U.S. and calling and being a local anywhere in the near future. Okay? And so getting back to it, though, in the 2016, if you would have held a gun to my head and made me vote, because I didn't vote, and I don't really care what you think on I do care what you think. It's my own opinion that I don't want to play the game if it's choosing between the lesser of two evils, basically. And so, but if you held a gun to my head and said I had to vote red or blue, I would have voted for Trump in 2016 because of the same reason I would have voted for Bernie. Because in my mind, he's different, and he's a change to the system that we all seem to admit is fucked up. And so, to me, the ideology that someone is not a politician who just almost at a blowing in the wind was like, I'm going to be president of the U.S., 5 years later was a reality TV star, could make it to that, was cool to me, just from that real objective outsider way looking in. It'd be like Flavor Flav becoming president in a way, and that would be terrible, but I hope you get my point. And so even with me saying 2016, hold a gun to my head, I would have voted for Trump, I still didn't like it, and still didn't like him, or don't like him. I think says some idiotic things. He should get Twitter out of his hands immediately. And so I would always get into these arguments with my dad, who is a Trump supporter and likes Trump. But from my dad's side, now that we've had these discussions throughout the years, I completely get where he's coming from, because back to voting is, everyone loves to proclaim that, we need to vote for the best interests for everyone, or, whatever they say. But in actuality, everyone's voting what's best for themselves, because everyone's their own main character of their own movie. And you got to take care of yourself first and get yourself to a certain level before you can even think about helping others. And so, like I said, my dad and I would get into these debates because I was, fully on board with Dad, how could you support this guy? Or how could you like this guy? And blah, 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 all those things. But from his perspective now, I get it. He's an older guy, he's 77 years old, had some health issues during the Obama administration with Obamacare. And I don't know the full details. I just know that he wasn't able to get in and get help in a timely manner because of how the system had changed around him. And so he had a brain issue going on, or the doctors really didn't even know what it was, but kind of was losing balance and like depth perception, wasn't driving for a year or two, and literally could only get a doctor's appointment like once every couple months. And every time it was kind of like they didn't really care and just kind of moving on to the next person in line. And finally, it just kind of like miraculously went away after some time. But that was the main thing. And then he also owns a small business in St. Louis. And with Trump's tax cuts and tax reforms, I'm not going to pretend like I know all the numbers. I'm just speaking from what he's told me, that business now is doing really well for him. And because of some things that have been changed since the time of Trump being in office. And then also with the stock market and being involved in that, his money has gone up. And so for a personal reason, it's his life has improved. And so I know the counter to that is, well, minorities and this and that, and he's racist and sexist and all those things, which, I don't fully agree. I think he said some bad shit in the past, but I don't necessarily think that means he is racist or sexist or whatever. This is just my own opinion. And from the stats, and like I said, I've been on the very, very, very outside looking in. Up until this COVID stuff, black employment was at an all-time low. Women unemployment was at an all-time low. He'd been doing things for criminal justice reform that got swept under the rug. I'm not sitting here trying to explain why you should support him, because I'm not going to vote for him in 2020, but I'm just giving you some objective things from a factual perspective, not from a tweet or a headline kind of perspective. You know what I mean? And, I know I just said I won't vote for him in 2000. I don't plan on voting at all in 2020 because, again, I don't want to do the whole lesser of two evils. But again, if you held a gun to my head for 2020 and made me pick between Joe and Trump, I would go Trump over Joe, simply because of what I said after 2016 is Joe Biden is just a career politician that's ingrained in the system, that is literally everything wrong that's wrong with the system that we all know and claim is fucked up, yet we think he's going to just help somehow. Like, he's just going to be the same old cog in the system. If I had a free vote, I would probably, I don't know enough to really endorse this or say it, but I've seen a few things from Jo Jorgensen, the third party candidate. She's libertarian. Like I said, I don't know enough, or I haven't researched enough to say like I would fully endorse her, but I bet after doing some research, I would maybe lean a little bit more towards her than any of the other choices. So I think that's something to look into. Like I've said before, I really hope that the third party or a fourth part, a multiple party system besides two parties can slowly make its way. And maybe this is the year, with such a divide in the Democratic and Republican factors. So that's where I'd be at with that. And like I said, I think it's the reason I'm explaining this is because it's just impossible to talk to anybody about these things, and I have to say it, that liberals right now, like, you guys are the fucking worst. Like, and please don't, I'm gonna be on your team in like 2 minutes or 10 seconds, so don't cancel me, don't unfriend me, don't block me, please just listen for 20 more seconds before that rage builds up in you. But arguing, or not even arguing, discussing with a liberal is intoxicating, because nothing that actually is being talked about with topic at hand gets discussed. It's like, I literally, when I'm talking with my friends that are liberals, I have to lead almost every sentence with, I didn't vote for Trump, I'm not going to vote for him in 2020. In order for them to not get into this like anti-Trump hate rhetoric that is essentially like mainstream media brainwashing over the last 4 years. That it's just really, really frustrating. And I think maybe it has to do with the fact that I think it's whatever party is not in office tends to be the more annoying one. Because I remember thinking, conservatives were pretty annoying during the Obama time, on Facebook, social media I'm talking. But right now, in the short time, like, liberals, you guys are the worst and like so hypocritical, and it just makes talking impossible because there's absolutely no listening going on from that side. And now conservatives, liberals, you get to be happy about this next sentence. Conservatives, you guys are a close second right now for being the worst. Okay? Like, don't pat yourself on the back. Right now, the liberals are like the easy ones to be annoyed by because they're just the loudest. But if Joe wins, then I'm sure my tune is going to change, and I'm going to think conservatives are just as annoying as the liberals are now. But holy smokes, you guys, like, it's painful. Like, I'm a proud American. I see our flaws in our system. I don't think America's the best. But I think America's pretty fucking great. And everyone that I come in contact with in my travels and living abroad, like, almost everyone's goal or dream is to visit the U.S. because of the opportunities and things that it presents compared with other places in the world. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like I've mentioned before, both, whatever the meme or whatever it is of like both the right and the left wing are a part of the same stupid bird is exactly how I feel. And I think the closer that we can recognize that both sides are really not the enemy of each other, but the enemy of the powers that be, we're going to be better off. But I know that's going to take a long time with the media narrative and us being so divisive. I've seen some awesome Instagram videos lately, though, of like, it's just a random thing of this like Trump supporter that it's this black dude that's in Huntington Beach talking to some Black Lives Matter protesters. And it's like this civil conversation, and they both have love for each other, and they both end up hugging it out at the end and saying like, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. And like, that's the kind of discourse that we need to have happen in order for us to truly grow. But that's difficult. I understand, because we've been taught, over my entire lifetime, I don't know when it started, but my entire lifetime is you don't talk about religion or politics. You don't talk about religion or politics. And what are the two issues that fuck up our world the most? Religion and politics. You know why? Because nobody at this point knows how to fucking talk about them. Because we've been trained to not talk about them and only talk about them in secret our entire lives. And so now, when we're in this landscape where people can talk freely and get their opinions out there to literally the world, we have this problem because we don't know how to have a discourse about these two topics, because our entire lives we've been told not to talk about them because they're taboo. And, moving forward, this discussion I had with a friend, kind of connecting some dots here, that I had this discussion with a friend a couple days ago or whatever, and it was kind of saying how like they didn't see how you could support Trump and support Black Lives Matter at the same time. And that's like part of this polarity problem that I really dislike. It's like an if and then statement. If you support Trump, then you can't support Black Lives Matter, or vice versa. And I explained to them, like, well, exactly what I just said in the first 20 minutes, that I'm not a Trump guy, but right now I lean more that way than Biden because of this and that. And I'm not going to vote, but this is where I'm at, and take it what you want. And I said, so, I would be more on that side of supporting Trump, but then I also really, really emphatically support the Black Lives Matter movement. But then I also noted that, but I don't support the Black Lives Matter organization because, and how can you do that? What do you mean? And And I said, well, I mean, the reason I don't support, I mean, the sentence, the statement, the idea, Black Lives Matter, I am going to try and help to the death of me. You know, like that's, I fully believe in it, because for all the people that say the all lives matter shit, like that all lives matter doesn't become true until Black Lives Matter. I don't know if you can, that registers in some people's head. And so I'm going to be fully on board of the idea of the statement of Black Lives Matter, but the organization of itself that organizes these things, and I know it's not all everybody that's a part of it, but the people who are funding it at the primary top level, who have some political gain from this, look it up. Black Lives Matter has received over $100 million of funding from the Open Society Foundation, who is headed by George Soros. Okay? And so George Soros, as you know, I'm not going to get into that thing right now, but do your own research. You'll see where George Soros and what he really wants in the world. And it's not good for me, you, no matter who you are on this side of the camera is. Okay? And then if you then look from where it's funded, and then also then look on where the money goes that is donated to Black Lives Matter, you'll find a little interesting problem there also. All of the money that's donated to Black Lives Matter goes into a pool or whatever for an organization called Act Blue. And Act Blue, if that money is unused or unaccounted for, whatever, like goes over a certain time limit and isn't used, then that money is automatically deposited into Democratic political campaigns. Bernie, Hillary, Biden, all of those guys. I'll put the thing right there. It's fact, you know. And so the reason that I don't support the organization, not the statement. I love the statement. I'm with the statement. I'll fight for that shit till I can't no more. But the organization is extremely political. And the only time that they really care about what's going on in the black community, in my opinion, is during election years, because they want that donation money for the Act Blue for the Democratic side. And so I'm all for donating and helping and protesting and all that stuff. I don't want to get it twisted, but think about where your money's going, and think about where the money's coming from, and who has political gain and why they do certain things. And so that's something I got into it the other day with a friend, that getting back to like the liberal, like emotional response was none of those things I felt got heard, because it was like I was attacking them, and I wasn't. I was just trying to talk just like this and get some understanding, so maybe we'd be closer in the end. But the cancel culture, the block culture, the unfriending culture, whatever it may be, has turned that like any opposition to someone's statement is an attack, and that's not true. Okay, we need to acknowledge that and get through that. Then, you know, another thing that's hot right now in national media, world media kind of, but also local media for me, as I'm a Seattle guy, is the CHAZ situation. I don't know how to call it. The CHAZ, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, that's going into place few blocks in Capitol Hill. Basically trying to be I think in layman's terms, like a sovereign area, you know, that is not being ran by the government or whatever. They're having co-ops, they're having free thinking things. It honestly, it sounds pretty cool to me. I know that surprisingly, the media is covering it with a completely false narrative and making it seem different than it really is. Because I've seen a lot of my friends that live in that area or have been going to the protests. I've seen a lot of firsthand stories on Instagram and videos and content around what's going on there. And to me, it seems really cool. And it seems like something that, if organized in the right way, could be a progressive thing for our future. The the way it's going currently, I don't see it as that. This is just my own speaking and my own thinking, because they need water and electricity. I think I'm just talking off the top of my head right now, and I don't have all the answers. And so then they need to get that from the city, but they don't want to be a part of the city. And I don't know. There's just a lot of weird little things that it could work a lot better if it was more on a like secluded area, or, you know, still in Seattle, but maybe somewhere that's not like dense city Capitol Hill area. Because it honestly reminds me a lot of this area called Christiania in Copenhagen, which is one of the cooler places I've been like in my travels. And I was there for New Year's, I think about 4 years ago. And Christiania, in short, is it's not recognized by the Danish government as a sovereign land, but it's this community that's on a lake that's within the city limits of Copenhagen that is its own community in essence. And you can go there and pretty much everything is legal. You can buy anything you want pretty much in this area. And, you know, we walked, I think our first or second night we got there, we walked through and went and bought some weed from there, and just dudes just chilling on a picnic table with a like a toolbox with everything from, I don't know. I was only interested in one thing. We got the weed. We got out of there. It looked like he had whatever I could have imagined in that box. But they were also kind of sketchy because I guess the cops will come in and raid it occasionally, because it's not technically legal to be doing that in Denmark or in Copenhagen. And so it's like this weird, like in-between legality thing that's going on. But it's its own community. It had restaurants. It had, you know, art galleries, had people living their residency around this lake. And, you know, I talked to a couple people that live there, and I guess the thing is, like, you know, it's free to live there. You don't have to pay rent, anything like that. It's all free. But you have to get like voted in or accepted by the community in order to get a house there. And you can do anything you want to the house. But just know that, like, when you leave, everything has to stay the way you made it. So it seemed really cool. You know, I didn't get to go there a ton, but the vibe when I was there was like this kind of laid back hippie atmosphere, but also not just free love. Like, there was a responsibility to it. And I still remember, I hope I got the picture of it, but when you leave, and it reminded me of the CHAZ thing, when you left Christiania, you would see a sign that said like, now entering the EU. And so that was pretty cool to me. And that's when I heard about CHAZ, that's like immediately what I thought. And so, I hope it can turn into something positive. Like I said, I think eventually it's going to fizzle out. But for the time being, maybe it sparks an idea or something that can be used in the future that could be beneficial for us all and really help us out, or at least provide a new way of living. Because I know there's people that are tired of the system and want to change and want to do something different. And that could be a great alternative. And people working together for the greater good. I'm all for that. Always. And my last little point, I know I've been going a while right now. I hope you're still with me. But my last little point that I feel that I've seen in the Facebook world, the discussion world is, you know, comparing the US or comparing Trump to a fascist or an authoritative state or a dictator or whatever you want to call it, like using that comparison, comparing him to Hitler, all these things. I'd just like to make it clear, like, I think that's incredibly like childish and naive, because that's not the case at all. And to me, it's really offensive to the people that, you know, went through the Holocaust or, you know, were actually subjects to dictatorships and authoritative rule. My girlfriend now that I've been dating for a few months and we live together, like, She's from Venezuela, and so I would implore you, if you think that the U.S. is an authoritative state, I would urge you to go to Venezuela and see what life is like there, which is truly under an authoritative state. And this isn't me reading things. This is me hearing from the mom and dad that are living there and the girl that lived there her entire life. Like it's not even close to being comparable, like at all. And so for the people that want to use that hot button, hot topic, hot word to basically insult the system or the president or whatever, you're free to say it. You're free to think it. It's your own thing. But I just want to let you know that like it's pretty childish in my opinion and offensive to the people that are actually going through it. To give you an idea, in Venezuela, like things are so bad with rations and food and stuff. My girl sends food back to her parents from Spain like once a month so that they can have enough stuff. She said when she'd go to the store when she was a kid, you know, you could only go on like Mondays depending on the last number on your ID card. And sometimes you'd get there, and if you didn't get there at the right time, like you'd only be bringing sugar back, you know, and the lines would be 2-3 hours just to get in the grocery stores. There was something she showed me yesterday or earlier this week, I should say, of people not even being rationed eggs. It was just all the eggs had been broken into a big bowl and pre-mixed, and then they were rationing out basically like egg yolk mix in bottles and like Gatorade bottles. People waiting in line to get that. I know that overnight, this happened I think about a month ago, overnight, the only TV channel that speaks in opposition to the government vanished overnight and is no longer a channel. And now it's even turned into the fact that there are no other channels there right now besides the ones that are put on the air by the government and for the government. So there's no sports, there's no anything like that. You know, the big issue for her dad right now is he wants to watch soccer, like the La Liga from Europe and stuff. And so we're figuring out a way to record it here in Spain, put it on YouTube, but like flip it, throw some music behind it so it doesn't violate copyright so he can watch that. And so I speak on that type of stuff because when I hear that from friends who have lived in upper middle class life their entire lives trying to compare their stuff to a dictatorship or authoritative state, I hope you know how incredibly offensive you're being to people that are actually going through that right now. And I urge you to have a second thought and maybe just look into it a little bit more, because even by definition, not authoritative, not fascist, nothing like that. There is words for it. I'm not going to get into that, but just I would ask you take a second thought on it, please, because it's not helping the conversation at all, one way or the other. It's making the divisiveness that a lot of people claim to dislike, it just creates more of that. And so, yeah, that's where I'll stop on that. And I should say, I'm not trying to like change your opinion on any of this. I'm not trying to argue at this point. I'm just speaking my truth and what I feel that I've been called to say. I'm done having debates and arguments of like comparing this and that, like, because I think nobody's going to change their mind on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or whatever. And so like, if you just come at me with whatever you have, you say that 2 + 2 = 6, then I'm just going to say, oh, okay. All right. I love you. And I appreciate your response. And, because I could sit there and show you, no, 2 + 2 = 4. And then there would still be some conversation to get around that. And I'm just not interested in essentially wasting my time doing that. I think everybody will learn whatever they want to learn on their own time and through their own experience. And if I can maybe help expedite that process a little bit, then that'd be great. But if not, it's just speaking my own truth. And so I'm not sitting here trying to convince anybody of anything. That's just where it's at. But I know I've been serious. Oh shit, I'm at 50 minutes right now. This is going to be a long one to edit. But I know I've been super political, even though I say I'm not going to be political on this one. But all of these things I had to get out, obviously. But to bring a little bit of fun to the, 6 remaining viewers right now, I got another question, or I got a thing I've realized now after living with a Venezuelan for a few months, and before that a Colombian. In Connecticut, I lived with a black dude and his Puerto Rican girlfriend for the 2.5 years I lived in Connecticut. And so I've been around a little bit of the Latina or Latino community and lived with them. And so my observation, or my question for the Latino community is, why the hell do you guys like sweeping so much? It's crazy to me. My girl and the dude we live with will literally sweep like 3 times every day. And by the 3rd time, and every now and then I sweep, and before they can see me sweep, just so I see them sweeping something that isn't actually dirty. I don't know what you guys were programmed when you were growing up by your mom or dad or whatever, but the sweeping thing is getting out of hand, and it causes me anxiety. Like my girl and the dude we live with will literally sweep like 3 times a day when there's nothing on the ground. And I mean, I know that I had to reflect and think back to myself growing up, and we only had hardwood floors in the kitchen, and we had carpet everywhere else. And my mom didn't really like cleaning all that much. And so the only time we really like deep cleaned anything was if we had company over. And so like for me, it's like I'm cool with like a little bit of dust here or a little bit of dirt there, just because I've grown up like that. And then if someone's going to come over, then yeah, like let's make this shit look nice for that other person. But in the meantime, I'm not going to like obsess over it being perfectly clean just to like freak my own head out if it's not clean. But living here in the Latin world, that's one thing that I've realized that has just been interesting for me and funny. And so I hope, please, if you're Latin and you got a response for me, please let me know in the comments. Please tell me what's going on. If you agree or disagree, why it's like that, why? I'm curious. Because it's something it just, to me as an American, it just doesn't make so much sense. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. We're just about at time, or where I think I try and with the solo ones stay at about under an hour. And yeah, I know I've been saying I'm gonna have some more football news for you. It's still kind of being delayed just with the COVID situation and entering new countries and traveling between European countries. Things just aren't set up yet, and so I don't know exactly the dates. I don't exactly know where I'm headed yet, but I hope by next week I will have an answer. I will have something out, but right now I can't speak on it. So yeah, we're gonna call it a day. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. Again, if you make it to this last moment, I'd really appreciate a comment. Just let me know. I got something in mind. Eventually, I got some T-shirts, some kind of clothing stuff coming out that I'd love to hook somebody up with, like the #1 fan or whatever. I'm not trying to like put myself on a Joe Rogan pedestal or anything like that, but just to let the people know who are tuning into what I have to say that I really appreciate it. And if I can somehow show my appreciation some way, I'd really like to do that in the future. So that's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. And again, we'll let it ride out with my guy Colin Charles. Alrighty. Until next time, peace and much love.
Tell me, baby.
Yeah. What's that
You
story?
ain't telling me to it, but hear your verse.
'Cause I've been thinking about you lately.
Yeah, come on.
Tell me, darling,
What else?
you're a star girl.
What else?
How the fuck do you not know the deal?
What else?
I've been thinking about you lately, and
What
it's
else?
got me going crazy.
What else?
Playing for you, baby.
What
Listen up, listen up.
Uh-huh.
Got me thinking about you, baby. And it's happening all the time. So I'm playing for you, darling. Now listen up, listen up.
Listen up.